Before we begin, I would like everyone, if we would please, observe a moment of silence for the servicemen and the civilians that were killed and that died last week in Kabul. Thank you. And now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
These chairs don't hold well. Excuse me. Item 2 is approval of the, roll call, I'm sorry.
Fredericks.
Roll call. You're on.
Here. Gilfelty.
Here.
McAnally.
Here.
Paul's here. Roscoe.
Here.
Jameson.
Here.
Crova.
Here.
Goldblade.
Here.
Freitag.
Here.
All present.
Item 3 is approval of the agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair. Support.
I have a motion from Mr. Gladfelty, supported by Mr. Bobowade, to, I lost you. There you go. To approve the agenda as presented. Mr. Gladfelty,
Yes.
Mr. Bobowade,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Ms. Jemison,
Yes.
Mr. McAnally,
Yes.
Ms. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crova.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, the agenda is approved. Item 5 is public hearing, and I'd like to let everyone know at home, since this is a public hearing, if you're interested to make comments or ask questions during the public hearing, you can email publiccomment@romulusgov.com during that time. And we're actually going to handle both public hearings at the same time. So we have RZ 2020-002, Romulus Trade Center, North Point Development. They're asking for a proposed amendment to the City of Romulus zoning map to conditionally rezone 171.60 acres from the current designation of RC, Regional Center District, to M1, Light Industrial District. This will be conditional. And then SLU 2020-003, which is Romulus Trade Center, and it is, applicant is NP Lordstrom, I'm sorry. Lordstown, I want to go shopping. NP Lordstown, 173, Mark Gloyeski, North Point Development. Did I get that right? And a special land use request to construct 7 to 9 warehouse and light industrial buildings greater than 80,000 square feet in size on 171.60 acres. This is located at Smith and Vining Roads. And, excuse me, do we want to start with the petitioners, or Carol, or Bob? I'm sorry. Brad, you want to start?
We have the PowerPoint slides up. Good evening, Brad Strader from MKSK here with Anne Marie Kirby, also from MKSK, and I'm just going to do a lead-in for the public and for commissioners, just a quick background on how we got to where we are. The Planning Commission has met with this applicant in the past a couple of times with different proposals, and the Planning Commission gave a lot of direction to us, the staff and consultants, and also to North Point. And so they've come back with a new proposal after like a year and a half of plans being submitted, and we had reviews and meetings and meetings and meetings. And so hopefully we were able to make everything consolidated because a lot of the issues that have been brought up by the Planning Commission about architecture, dealing with traffic, concerns about trucks, making sure that we have a commitment for the commercial, if we're going to allow warehousing and so forth, through a lot of work on the applicant's side and our side. Hopefully, you'll see the presentation tonight is much improved over what you've seen in the past. And that's probably one of the reasons that our letters in the past were very, very long, and now so many things have been addressed by the applicant that hopefully you'll find that it is, the letters are pretty concise, but that's why. So there has been a lot of work that's gone on, and the applicant did change their team and brought in new people and so forth to better address some of the things that the Planning Commission and Council brought up and things that we heard from public at some of the public hearings in the past. So just a little bit of background there. This area in the city has been talked about for years, in terms of decades. So this is the latest master plan for the Vining Road sub-area, and you can see kind of that right in the middle of it is the North Point site. And so the Planning Commission and Council changed some of the regulations in the past to add standards for landscaping and campus development and better architecture, taller landscaping, pathways, sidewalks, and a lot of design standards with the idea of if we're going to allow industrial in this area, that it would be a higher quality than other industrial in the city and more of a campus-like atmosphere. So that's kind of the sub-area plan, and we've had a lot of meetings at the Planning Commission and Council on that sub-area plan. So that's the master plan. And this is just a highlight of some of the things that are in the sub-area plan for zoning is specific standards for preserving views and berms and landscaping, incentives for saving some of the woodlots that are scattered throughout the area. The sub-area plan and the zoning ordinance talk about new streets and extensions and dealing with traffic, having special provisions for a traffic impact study that separates automobiles from truck traffic and how they're managed. And I think the city also learned from the Amazon site that we needed a little bit more regulation in terms of the management of truck circulation and patterns and so forth. So that was worked into the ordinance as well. And the applicant and their traffic engineer, I think, came up with some ingenious ways of dealing with some of the concerns the Planning Commission had of dealing with trucks. And there's been a lot of attention about truck traffic. There have been a number of meetings with the TIFA board talking about truck traffic and transportation and traffic overall in the area and how to make improvements and so forth. So that's also been worked into the presentation. And then there are specific guidelines in the sub-area plan and in the zoning ordinance standards for architecture and landscaping and open space and 10% open space or more, incentives for usable open space and so forth, signs and everything else. So I think a lot of work of the Planning Commission that got us to the point where we are today. This is just an overview for the public, because I think most of the Planning Commission is pretty familiar with this, but the overlay was changed to allow some industrial development as part of it, as the way to stimulate development, but keeping part of the area just for commercial in the future. But after discussion between the Planning Commission and Council, there was an exemption for warehousing. The council was not comfortable with allowing warehousing to be in the overlay district. So that's why the applicant is here today, because they're meeting the design standards listed here, but they want to have warehousing, and that's why they're going in with a conditional rezoning. So the main part of the conditional rezoning is in return for allowing warehouse use and part of the site, they're providing other conditions, meeting all the overlay standards, but also tying in construction of some of the commercial along Wick Road, specifically tied to the warehousing on the main part of the property. So this is an overview. We'll give our comments from OHM and MKSK afterward, but let the applicant kind of walk through the presentation. But this is the overlay. So what's shown in yellow is where the conditional rezoning would be. So it's for an M1 zoning to allow warehousing with conditions. And the conditions are something that has been offered by the applicant. They've done a conditional rezoning letter. They've probably 98% of the questions that city staff and consultants have been addressed. We would suggest if this moves forward that the applicant knows that there's still a few tweaks that the Jim Tam, the city attorney, brought up that would need to be addressed before it goes to council. But we felt at the planning commission level, it's pretty far along in terms of the conditional rezoning. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go in our review, but they've restricted certain uses that the city staff and consultants thought would really not be appropriate for the area, and North Point agreed. Again, they've tied, you can see the red area along Wick Road, that they've tied the RC zoning in a tiered development that they'll show in their presentation, that a certain level of buildings goes in concurrence with some of the commercial, and then the next phase of industrial buildings or warehousing buildings can't go in until phase 2 of the commercial happens. And then the third phase of industrial is dependent upon the third phase of the commercial. So that's something that city staff and consultants, based on input from the Planning Commission and Council, have spent a lot of time on the many months of meetings that we've had over that. There is a special land use. So the special land use, one of the requirements for special land use right now is any building that would be over 80,000 square feet needs a separate special land use. And so one of the things that the applicant is requesting that we as the staff and consultants support is to give them a blanket special land use, that they don't have to come in with each building and go through a special land use. That as part of this overall conditional rezoning, they would be approved for over 80,000 square feet as long as they meet the standards of the conditions that are listed. Next. So this is the list of uses in the RC and the M1. So this is just a summary list, but on the left column is the major RC uses that we have wanted to see in this area for a long time. And the RC uses would still be allowed on the north side of Wick Road and other areas that are currently zoned RC. But the request is for the area shown in the previous slide in yellow would be this light industrial M1 that would allow warehousing and distribution, kind of the fourth row on there. So this is the reason for the conditional rezoning, to go to M1 to allow that use, but keeping the rest of the site RC. Again, we had some concerns with some of the M1 uses that would be allowed, because one of the goals is if we're going to allow some M1 uses or warehousing, we want to make sure that it's still going to support RC and the rest of the area. And so the uses shown in gray there that we thought could be contradictory to having future RC uses along Wick Road, their property as well, but also other RC uses in the region. So they've agreed to restrict those uses as part of the M1 zoning. So they would have RC zoning uses are allowed and meet the conditions of the overlay zoning ordinance, and allow some of the M1 uses that are shown here in the middle column, but they would exclude the uses on the right column. And then this is just a quick overview of things, but the conditions that they've offered, again, to meet the Vining Road standards for architecture and landscaping, and this is their overall development plan. So the conditional rezoning that would, if approved by the council, would include this conditional plan that shows the buildings tied into the commercial and all the uses. So there's phasing that they'll go through in their presentation, showing the berm phasing and landscaping and sidewalks and so forth, and the concurrence of some commercial with the industrial. So that's the overviews of the conditions that they are offering. One of the things we've talked about was traffic, and they'll talk about it in their presentation, but we're concerned, as the Planning Commission brought up, about truck traffic on Ecorse Road or going out to Merriman Road or other places. So they've revised their design and their access so that it's really forcing trucks to go to and from Vining Road interchange and not going north on Vining Road to Ecorse or over to Merriman, or going to the residential areas east and west of the site. And so there's one access for trucks, and it's in the southwest portion of the property to help direct trucks to go to Vining Road, and there will be a new traffic signal paid for by the applicant or the TIFA board to put a signal there as another incentive for the trucks to use that access. Jerry had brought, for example, the idea of this would be a place to really preserve woodlands. So in working with the applicant, can see the woodlands and the wetland map, that will be part of the preservation area or conservation easement. And those woodlands will help buffer the industrial use from the commercial to the east, but it also provides a good view if you're driving along Smith Road, that it'll help screen the views of the buildings. The Planning Commission had a lot of concern about dock doors, right? One of the uses of warehousing come in the area were the views to the dock doors. And so the applicant has gone through numerous iterations of this plan to add berming. They're showing a 4-foot high berm instead of the 3 feet that's required. And they've made a lot of changes to the berming based on review comments we've had in the past to help screen the views of the dock doors. The dock doors do not face the public road. They're internalized, and so they'll be screened by berms and landscaping in the woodlot, but also they've organized the building to reduce the views of the dock doors. And then along the northern side of Wick Road, we've got commercial development that will also help screen the dock doors. So I think that's another plus. They've got extensive sidewalks throughout. I guess one of the request I would have for the applicant is before they come to the Planning Commission to have a sidewalk-only plan that just clearly identifies, based on some other developments we've had in the city. We had to come up with something. You know, they made all the changes. We had to have something that they still needed to do. So one of the things we think they still need to do is a sidewalk plan that clearly identifies the sidewalks. So the goal was to make sure any employee can walk to the restaurants along Wick Road or walk to the public sidewalk. It is pretty clear on their plans, but sometimes we've seen these faint lines. We'll get into debate later of what was a sidewalk versus a curb or something else. We would like a plan that just talks about the sidewalks. And the last thing is traffic. So Fleeson Vandenbrink, Julie Kroll here, she may be talking their presentation, but they replaced their former traffic engineer with Fleeson Vandenbrink, who worked on Cajoyne and others, kind of knows the city pretty well. And so they just an hour just sent us the revised traffic report that we'll be looking at, but we have had a number of conversations with Julie and her team, and we feel that they will be addressing the concerns that the Planning Commission had in the past with traffic. They can talk about that a little bit, but we will review the traffic impact study before it goes to the City Council. But we're pretty confident that based on all the discussions that we've had, that they know the expectations of the city and that they're being addressed in the traffic impact study. And the main thing for council is to get an agreement on what improvements are needed. So they need 2 traffic signals at I-94. We used to think it's 1, but now it's 2 traffic signals plus a new traffic signal at their entrance on Vining Road and some other geometric changes to accommodate the uses in the future. So we have those, the timing of those improvements are in the new traffic study, and we have to compare the timing of those and the cost and between the applicant and the TIFA board work over the timing, because we want to make sure that the road improvements and the site signals are in before the need is there. So again, I think Jessica can speak to that too, but I think we feel pretty confident it's addressed and we felt comfortable it can move forward through the Planning Commission as long as this gets reviewed and approved by the consultants before the council meeting. So that's just an overview of where we are, a little bit of background, and I think the thought here would be to let the applicant kind of present the background and the phasing and so forth to you directly, and then we can do our reviews. We did, to help kind of things speed along, we put together a findings of fact just in front of you tonight, and it takes the key things from the various letters and meetings we've had, and just to help you make a motion, if you want to make a motion of the background or the findings of fact that we've made, and you can add to it, and a recommendation for action at the end. Again, you could change this based on presentations made by the applicant, any public hearing comments you have in your own review, and we'd be happy to help you with that as we move forward.
I'm sorry, you done, Brad? Thank you. At this time, I guess did you have any question, Bob or Carol? No? I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Brahmos. I'm one of the owners and founders of North Point based in Kansas City. And Brad, I'm glad you gave the overview that you gave and the opening that you gave. I'm going to start probably in a different manner than you've ever seen an applicant start, which is I have personally met with some of you. I've met with council members. I've met with members of the community. As you heard, I started completely over with a whole new team. In Missouri, I would describe that as I fired everybody and started over. I don't think we listened to you. I don't think we listened to staff. I don't think we listened to the community. And I told the folks that I met with that I was sorry to hear that. I'm embarrassed by that, and it should not have been that way. And I think we're fortunate that you gave us another chance to be here tonight. Staff was in a, I won't speak for them, but I think they were in a position of frustration. And I got rid of traffic engineers, every lawyer, and every staff member that worked on this project and asked for forgiveness and a new shot to have a new plan that took in feedback and was a better plan that met or exceeded your overlay. So I hope that you as commissioners would hear that as honesty and pretty vulnerable. I've done thousands of hearings and I've never started one like this. And I don't think we represented who we were as people or as a company very well. And I'm embarrassed by that. So much so that we started over. And I think what you heard as an overview tonight and what I'm going to present, I am proud of where, I'm not proud of where we came from, but I'm proud of where we've come to and the iteration and the amount of work that we've put in. You haven't seen us, we've been working on this and trying to think of creative ways to meet and exceed your plan, but also to give the community what they want and need. So again, not typical opening fashion, but I wanted to say that first and foremost on behalf of myself, our ownership, and the more than 700 employees of North Point Development that live all over this country. I don't think we handled this with care. And I will say, to set the stage in a different way, I was in Minneapolis in a suburb this morning, and I'm working on a very similar type development there. And what we're presenting there, all joking aside, we call the Romulus standard now. We have a couple hundred buildings that we own across the country. I think what you'll see here, it sets the bar for landscaping, architecture, screening, traffic, and this should be not only how we think about how we do development, but how we present to bodies like you and ultimately the city council. And so we hopefully will get approved and this project will go forward, and we will use your airport to bring community members from all over the country to this project to show what a good development can be. And so I think we've put a lot of effort in to making it a 180 of where we were to where we are today. So thank you. That's again not typical, and with that, I'll go ahead and get started on the presentation. As you heard from Brad, this is okay. I was trying to click with the microphone. You have seen this is a body of work that has taken us months to get to. As you can see from the beginning, I'm going to describe these as the industrial portion and the commercial portion. I think that's the best way to describe the plan because there are two components to this. Specifically, you'll see Royal Farms. For those of you who are not familiar with that, we're going to go a little bit in depth. But again, back to where we made a mistake. I think we told you retail wasn't possible, and I think that was a very narrow focus. I think we rolled up our sleeves and through our national network, have found retailers and have found our first retailer that we are trading final comments on for coming here to open their first store in the Detroit market, actually their first store in Michigan. So with that, I'll have you go to the next one. I would be remiss to say that, we have developed here. We developed on e-course. I would simply call that promises made, promises kept. I think that development has turned out phenomenal. I think that what we're going to have with this development will be even better in terms of landscaping, architecture, design. But I will say that we aren't an unknown entity, and I hope that your staff has shared with you the success that we've had at what we call E-Course Commons, not just from a tenant perspective, but from the whole development as a whole. And I feel like we've been a good partner. We've invested, a lot of money here in terms of the capital investment, created jobs. One of the folks I know that's working in this facility grew up in Romulus. We just made that connection at the ribbon cutting, as you can see in this picture. But this was a proud day for us. We're proud to invest here, and we want to invest here more. We'll go to the next slide. This is a large-scale project. The permanent jobs will be, over 1,100 as we project. Obviously, you're talking about a large capital investment from our standpoint. The wages that will be generated out of here will affect the entire community. It will go beyond the limits of Romulus, but it will also feed the retail portion of the project as well. We need people that make good wages, and we need those jobs to support the retail that will happen in the neighborhood commercial area. We're going to develop that in a pace, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what we did not want was the idea of we get all the industrial and then you maybe get retail at the end. I think we put our money where our mouth is, getting the retailer right off the bat, plus a series of penalties if we don't do that, right? The development is staged in a phased approach. If you don't mind going to the next one. The community benefits from our perspective are large. Obviously, your team and staff can weigh in on that, but looking at getting the anchor right off the bat on the retail, I know retail has been something that the community has wanted. This is something that the community can use and will benefit. The project as a whole will be a catalyst not only for the retail on our site, but retail as a whole around it, right? When you put that amount of jobs, construction jobs, permanent jobs in an area, it obviously has a positive effect on retail. If you have not heard this, part of our commitment is the Romulus, what we call the Romulus Job Fair and the Romulus First Look. So we have made a commitment as part of our agreement that we will host job fairs. Each employer will be required to have a look ahead to give jobs to Romulus employees first. So we do this in the city of Detroit. That's a requirement. We didn't invent this, but we found it to be good practice. If you've seen anything about us lately, we're doing the new headquarters for Leard, which is a large GM supplier, and it's got that Detroit, what we call Detroit First Look for their residents in that area. So something that we threw out as an option just to say what is the benefit to the community as a whole. And then, obviously the plan itself, and you hit on it, sidewalks, where obviously we have this Rosenworth drain. We could go in depth on that, but it is a large infrastructure project that we'll be working around. We'll talk about open space and green space, the economic impact of the, taxes that we generate, the infrastructure improvements that we're going to build. Again, this is a very, very large scale project in terms of how much money is going into it and the jobs and taxes it creates. As you saw the preview, the plan, the industrial buildings, and I will just speak a little bit off the cuff here. Your overlay in a very blunt manner. I know there have been challenges with Amazon. There have been challenges with traffic. Your overlay, building size, the parking ratio, the dock count, it really eliminates the ability to have an e-commerce fulfillment like Amazon. Amazon would not take one of these buildings. You would never meet their specs. You would never meet their size. You would never meet their parking. You would never meet their dock count. So in a roundabout way, and we're fine with it, in a roundabout way, this prohibits and prevents that from happening. And again, I don't know the community's feelings. I hear generally that there's challenges with Amazon and what's happened there. I would just say that your building size and, like I said, the other restrictions that you've put on, and that's fine with us. We feel like the market is robust enough, whether that's GM and Ford suppliers or other automotive suppliers, other manufacturers. We build these buildings in these parks all over the country. For those of you who don't know, Kansas City is only second to Detroit in the cars made. We have a large Ford plant. We make the F-150 and the Transit van. We have a large GM plant. We have 2 parks right next to those plants with buildings just of this size that are more than 50% filled with manufacturers and suppliers to the Ford and GM plant. That's who we think will come here. And we'll also see small businesses, mom and pops. We have a startup in Kansas City I just approved today for 45,000 square feet. It's a guy started his own business. He's in the crating. It's called Craters and Freighters. And he just won the contract for the control panels. They're made in Kansas City for the Tesla launch pad. He's building the crates for those. He doesn't have enough space for that. 43,000 is a lot of space for him. He's coming from about 10,000 feet. But you'll see companies like that here that are in your community. Maybe their owners are in your community or nearby. So that's what I would call the industrial section. The commercial retail portion, as I mentioned, we'll go in a little bit more in depth. But what we see there is the ability to service the community with fresh food, good food, and other amenities, whether that's dry cleaning, a coffee shop, donut shop, things like that, that will fulfill the community's needs, but will also be a complement to the over 1,000 employees that are in our park on a daily basis when it's fully built out. You'll notice, as you said, one thing that I think was really important is that we created an inner loop system. We're not connecting trucks any longer. That's a big plan change from what many of you have seen. We are not connecting trucks to Smith. So basically all the docks, all the truck courts, everything's interior loop, no ability to get out Smith, and then obviously, as we talked about, the new signal on Vining. And so I think we've thought through this. I think it's a smart plan. I think it's self-contained, and it forces that truck traffic where we want it to go, and obviously also keeps in mind the car and pedestrian as well. If you want to go to the next one. There's the phases. These are essentially tied to the phases of the industrial and the commercial at the same time. So you have a phase 1 in yellow, phase 2 in blue, and then phase 3 in the pink there. So pink or red. So again, as the industrial builds out, we'll be required to build the commercial out. And that's how it should work, right? The more industrial we get, the more jobs, the more users, the more need for that retail commercial piece. So those should go right in lockstep. There's no bait and switch ability here. Oh, you like the pretty plan? We have a cash penalty and a requirement to develop those phases of the commercial piece as well, which was something that had never been on the table previously as we had discussed this plan with you. And there it is. We are starting with Royal Farms. For those of you who have traveled to the East Coast, you probably know Royal Farms. It's a major competitor to, say, Wawa, something like that. But this has a bigger food component. We specifically, we were approached, and I think I'll just be open, we were approached by Love's and some of the other truck stops, and we heard the community loudly that that's not what you wanted. No overnight truck parking. We do not want truck stops. This is not what we want here. We specifically went and targeted Royal Farms. Pure happenstance and luck, the director of real estate for Royal Farms is a Detroit native. He lives in Philly. I can't make it up. We have worked a couple projects with them on the East Coast where they needed something. We're getting ready to develop a U.S. Steel site. It's an 1,800-acre park in Philly. Every retailer wants to be there because it's going to create 10,000 jobs. And we said, for you to even get a sniff at U.S. Steel, we really need you to look at Romulus. And when they came up and they toured, met with city, drove it, head of real estate, Detroit native, said, this is where we want our flagship store. This will really be big for us and big for the community. And I think it's going to be a great complement to our park. So Royal Farms plus the industrial development, and then we'll go into those other phases, as you can see, with retail units, 3 additional retail units, followed by phase 3 with those 2 additional retail units and or that penalty, right? So I think we've tried to address that best we can from the community needs standpoint. Here's a little picture of Royal Farms, and again, if you've been in Maryland, Baltimore, Philly, you're probably familiar with these. I've eaten Royal Farms way too much over the last 4 years, but look them up, look at their accolades. They're typically some of the best retail accolades, and I would describe it as the place you go as a destination and you happen to get gas while you're there. You're probably going for the food, and then if you need gas, you get it. So it's not your typical convenience store, not your typical gas station. Here's a little bit of some pictures of their food product, and again, we'd be happy to get, I know we've had some interactions with the real estate and some other leadership in Royal Farms, and I think, staff and others that we've interacted with have been really impressed with that operation and what's going to come here. There's phase one. We broke out the phasing plan. I hate to admit, I am getting older. I think the one thing that I would hand out here is I asked specifically for this count. I have never seen a landscaping plan. We own 107 million square feet across the country. I have never seen a landscaping plan like this. So I thought it was important. In phase one, we're planting just shy of 1,700 trees and just shy of 6,000 shrubs and grasses. I have never seen a more robust plan than that. And I think that is something that we heard loud and clear was berm that outside. Hide it, right? Hide it best you can. Landscape it. We want it to look like a park. My words, we want it to look like Disneyland. This is, again, above and beyond anything I've ever seen us do or any city standard I've seen. But that's good. It makes the plan tougher. It makes the plan better, which makes the development better. Go to the next slide here. You can see in total what that means. But we're just over 1,800 trees and just shy of 7,000 shrubs and grasses, and it lists out the sizes and kinds there. But again, I wanted to specifically highlight hearing landscaping buffering I thought was a really important thing. I will just tell you, we're exceeding the standard. We've also budgeted for another 200 trees that after everything gets developed, we will literally work with your staff and we will spot, is there ability to see a dock? Is there a viewpoint here? And we will spread those out as they grow. We're doing that at E-Course now. We just ordered 40 more trees for E-Course Commons just to make sure that we're, meeting and exceeding that. Some die, some are, new, and so they're not, fully grown out. So we want to be a good partner there. But I think what this shows is this will be a very, very unique but very high standard when it relates to the landscaping and berming. Sidewalks, no problem. We can send you a separate plan if you want to go to the next one here. All right. We tried to call out specifically where they're at. We'll submit this. Again, we hear that pedestrian access and pedestrian safety is a really important thing. People like to walk here, haven't had that ability with sidewalks. We tried to best complement that. And then obviously, I think it was called out specifically about the conservation easement, the trail. Obviously, that all connects into the sidewalk network as well. Now, if you go to the next one, traffic, as Brad said, that's probably where we've spent a majority of our time. New traffic consultant, I think, worked really well with the city. We have our traffic study in. We're going through that. We'll be going through that here over the next several weeks as we refine it. But our number one goal is get the trucks out, get them going left, no access to Smith, and how do we accomplish that? We'll also, if you haven't heard, obviously I think it's listed, we will, and we've done this across the country, we will provide lease language that restricts that right truck turn. I know that the question that always gets asked is, how do you enforce that? We've done that from citing to we're working with a community now where we're funding a police officer for ticketing. So we typically work with the city in a variety of ways. Obviously, the tenant is in default if they break those rules. No one wants to be in default, not get to use their space and get to pay their rent. No one likes that. So usually that gets, usually you've got a several $1 million hammer that hits these companies on saying this is a rule of the park and you're breaking it and you're in default of your lease, right? There is a hammer. But we do that in a variety of ways, whether that's a warning, whether that's through our property management. Obviously, we have property management here at E-Course Commons. That team and staff would grow for this, or hand in hand with the city and maybe even that's private policing as well. We've done it in a variety of ways. We tried to accomplish that best, though, by engineering. That channeling of car traffic only right, the signalization, the ease to go left for a truck, the hard to go right? So you can put physical barriers in to help prevent that. And that's what we've really focused on this traffic plan to do. Setbacks, just simply, I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this, but really what we tried to do was, what does your overlay require, and what did we do? We met or exceeded all of the setback requirements that you had. That's what this simply is illustrating. And again, what we want, at the end of the day, we don't want this to just be the Romulus standard that we use. We hope this is something that you use, right? You have a developer that's been creative and done and met and exceeded. You spent a lot of time on your overlay district. I don't know how long you spent on it, but you spent a lot of time. You had a lot of community input. You spent time. I don't know this for a fact, but I assume you don't get paid for coming tonight. So you volunteered your time for the community. And I think this should be the standard that you hold others accountable to. And that's a good thing for the community, right? You should expect more. The usable open space on the next one, again, we did not count the wetlands or the detention area in that. I think your code, I don't want to get into the nuances of that. I think you could count some of it, probably not count others, but we just did simple math so it wasn't fuzzy and said, we'll exclude that. And we, what's required is 10%, and we're just over 21%. So again, tried to meet and exceed your code the best we could after hearing your input. I don't go into this, Brad, I think hit this really well, but what we really tried to do was, again, I said it multiple times, meet or exceed the intent of that. How do you do it? How do you get creative to do it? Whether that's losing square footage or adding architectural fenestrations, bump outs, glass, whatever it might be from an architectural standpoint, we've taken the tact of meet or exceed that guideline and always try to exceed it. And I think we've done a good job of that. The next one here, again, the building coverage, the outdoor storage, just really trying to hit home of, what you spent time on saying is important to you in that document, how we're exceeding it. The 80,000 square foot building, we talked about limiting it to that 350, which again, I know what, our intent is there. We're fine with that. I understand the intent of the community there. And then from the parking standpoint, what I would say is, what's important here is that I think we will see manufacturing and we will see assembly. And if you see those typically on a per square foot have a higher job ratio. That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing that people are getting a job, whether that's Romulus residents or others, which is also going to fuel the retail and the commercial. So car parking is probably not a bad thing. Truck parking, and if you saw the list of exceptions, I distinctly heard no truck terminals. We don't want that. No truck stops, no truck terminals. That's not our intent either. We struck that from an eligible use in that document. So if you go to the next one, I think the building architecture, again, those offsets, the landscaping, the building orientation, so all the docks are internal. Having no docks on building 1, only a front facade of the building with car parking, and then flipping 6 and 7 so that we had that facade and no docks facing what I'd call the hotel area, the commercial area. Again, you just basically encapsulated all of the docks internal, then you put a big landscaped berm around the whole thing, and then made trucks come out essentially one spot. So I think it's literally just a much better plan. I think it's much better for us and it's much better for the community. Next one there. And again, just to recap, we spent a lot of time. Some of that was painful, hearing where we had made missteps. I addressed that, but I think that we listened. I think that once that was open and that table was set for open dialogue, a new team with new ideas, we came up with a better plan. I think this is the best plan that we could have that meets and exceeds your guideline, that still is feasible for us to do. We're going to invest a lot of money here in capital investment. It's going to create a lot of jobs, but at the end of the day, I think this is something the community can be proud of. They can be proud of the retail that we're going to get. They can be proud of the development as a whole, the way it looks, the way it feels. I don't feel it's intrusive. I don't feel that. I feel that we've addressed your concerns and in the larger community concerns as well. So I know it sounds odd, but thank you for holding tough. You never wavered on what you knew that this community wanted. We just didn't listen to that. And I think with a new mindset and open ears and creative approach, we came to that conclusion. And you don't hear it often, but you were right and we were wrong. And I think that we've tried to address that best we can tonight. So I know I spoke a lot there. I'm happy to answer any questions. If they're hard questions, I got a lot of smarter people than me behind me that can answer them. But I hope that you take my comments as a sincere effort to be better.
I probably should at this point open the public hearing. Okay, and I want to remind those at home that if you wish to participate in the public hearing, email publiccomment@romulusgov.com, and I will open the public hearing. Let the record show we have on file an affidavit of first-class mail, and if there's anyone here who wishes to speak on this matter, please raise your hand. When you're acknowledged, come to the podium, or we will wait a few minutes, see if we have any emails. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak? No emails? Nothing?
We do have people watching on YouTube live though, so in addition to cable.
Okay, so we'll just move right on?
Monitor it during the public hearing, if any come in, I'll let you know.
Okay. So I'll close the public hearing now?
You
Or leave it
can
open?
keep it open. Well, did you want to talk to the planning commissioners and get their comments on during the hearing?
Well, yeah, I'll leave that open during the public hearing, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, yes. So we'll leave that open. I'll at this point turn it over to the commissioners for any comments. Mr. McAnally.
Madam Chairman, I have to say that had this been a couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't be too happy right now. But I think, honestly, we have come such a long way from them. I am impressed with the effort you put in and what you presented tonight. I have a couple of questions. Now, everything says that for construction of 7 to 9 warehouses. Everything I see shows 7, but if that were to change, are we saying that that would fit within the same footprint that is shown?
Good evening. Mark Golaski with North Point Development. Through our conversations with staff as we were working on this plan, we've settled on a 7-building park as our base plan that we wanted to bring in front of you. But as we've continued to monitor the market in this region, we've seen several of these potential suppliers to some of the automotive facilities that want their own building that may be smaller. So what we wanted to do was leave it open in case we want to split one of those larger buildings into maybe 2 smaller buildings that could house a tenant that specifically wants a building built for their use only. We fully intend to build the 7 buildings that you see on the plan, but there is the chance that we could get a tenant that comes along that wants their own building that we think would be a really good fit for the community. Typically, if there's a build-to-suit tenant, those tenants are a longer-term lease. A lot of times they bring more jobs because they're building a building specifically for their use. So we wanted to leave it open in case we want to split 1 or 2 of those buildings to allow for.
So it wouldn't overly affect the footprint that we're seeing in these layouts?
We wouldn't go outside of the 171 acres. We wouldn't go outside of really the impervious footprint that we're showing. We're committed to keeping those berms and the landscaping as shown. So what you might see.
I would best describe that as the size of the pizza won't change. We might slice one of the slices a little thinner. I would think that you'd primarily be looking at 6 and 7, maybe a 3 building is probably where it happens. You'd still have your 350,000 square foot max, right? So we're not gonna, it wouldn't be a worry of they're gonna combine 2 and try to do a bigger building. It would actually be the opposite, split one of those down. And again, you might see somebody automotive related. We're working on one of these in Kansas City right now, a Ford plant there, and they just said, we make gas tanks. We have to have our own building. We can't be with other tenants, and we only need 100,000 square feet. So what you might see for that 207, for example, in Building 6 might be 2 independent, 100s.
We
So
do
no
have a-
encroachment into the retail, nothing like that. We're
That's
staying
right.
within that footprint.
That's right. It would stay
That's
what I-
kind of what I just wanted to put out there.
And there is language in the conditional rezoning that they have offered that we suggested that says they could change the building configuration, but it has to preserve the integrity of the overall development plan. They have to have a revised development plan that comes back to the planning commission concurrent with the site plan. And I forgot to mention, this is an overall development plan, but when they come in with the use, they'll come back to the planning commission for a detailed site plan with the buildings and so forth. So you will get a shot with a more detailed review with the Royal Farms and the first industrial or distribution buildings as well. So that'll come back to you, and if they were going to change the configuration of the building, they'd have a new development plan that would be attached to the site plan, that I would go back to the planning commission to review and say, yes, we can accept the change of the building configuration because it meets the intent of the ordinance and the development standards.
So rearranging the deck chairs, basically. It
Yes.
doesn't change much.
Basically, that was a great description about the size of the pizza.
Kinda
The
what it
agreement
is.
says that the square footage will not change. It's, 2,161,968 square feet, whether it's 7 buildings or 9 buildings.
That's fine.
So-
That
They can
answers
go
that
down,
part.
but they can't
Can't
go
go
up.
up, right.
The other comment is, my own, is that we've gone through a very long process. Originally, back when we had a petitioner that did his own commercial study, that they presented to us in the council saying, what the demand was and where it was. And it showed that logistics services like this are in high demand, where retail was substantially lower. Of course, our first reaction is, well, we really ought to do our own study. And so the city went out and paid the money to do their own study, and I think pretty much came up with the same conclusions. Of course, all the citizens would love to have retail. I think this is a good start towards working at what we need as people. And this will bring jobs, this will bring people to the area, hopefully it'll bring people to live in our city. We have houses going in right now, new houses. So I'm hoping something like this could be a new beginning. Now, my last question, and maybe this could go to Mary, is this in the Tifa district? So this statement about 38 million to the schools,
The TIFA does not capture school taxes, so that would go to the schools.
it would, okay, good. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Frederick and then Mr. Paul?
I just want to make a comment. To have a gas station in this vicinity would actually be a boon to anybody that is traveling the interstate. Because I've seen people broken down on the Vining Road ramp, go to the top. And I pulled over and told them, don't go that way. There's nowhere to go. And their only option is either catch a ride or head for Goddard Road in Wayne, which is quite a walk in there. To see this gas station anchor that corner, I think that would be a catalyst for what we're looking here as far as potential retail. And when you say retail, it could be like say a phone store or just fast food type establishments. So to see the gas station at the corner there it's really that's a master stroke right there. Other than that, to say to see the campus, I mean, we've been asking for truck trailers to all face in. I think that's what we're seeing here. No truck access to Smith Road was, again, what we were looking for to keep them corralled, so to speak. To see the left turn out of there only going across the Vining Road would be a curb cut. Again, that's good forethought, because the trucks are out of control. And that's my only comments I have at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Paul?
Again, I think that I agree with Mr. McAnally. 2 years ago, we were fighting this project. Now we seem to be accepting it somewhat. I had several questions. We're in the process. Phase 1 would be building 1, 2, and 3. Am I correct?
Phase 1 would be 1, 2, and 3 of the industrial plus
Right.
the first retail.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. And then after that, it'd be 5 and 7 and 4 and 6?
Yeah, we could maybe go back here. Here, I think there's a good, and I don't know if your color is, your colored plan is showing up very well. Let's see what it's at here. Yeah. It's page 5 in your book as well. If you have, I think so you see 4, 5, and 7, and that's in phase 2, and then you see the pink or red highlighted as phase 3. So there's always a industrial paired with a commercial. They're lockstep.
Okay, and those phases are also involving the retail also, am I correct?
That's correct.
And if you don't phase it in like the way I guess the agreement has not been settled yet, am I correct? It's still, you're working on it with the
Yeah,
attorney?
the attorney, our attorneys and your attorneys are,
Okay.
as a city, attorneys are hammering through that. I would say it's pretty close to being done, but there's a clawback and penalty provision
Right.
for that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I went through it today, and I see that there's some escrow funds involved.
There's a what?
Escrow funds,
That's right.
very substantial.
It's real substantial.
And to figure out who's going to hold that money.
Yeah, so I think that we outlined that a little, maybe on the next slide. Yeah, so that's the piece, that's where we're at in negotiations now. I wanted everyone just bluntly to know that I was serious. And, you know, I think you've been told what will happen on this piece of property for a very long time without it actually happening. And I wanted to show you, not only, we want the retail, that helps us, right? That helps, when we have parks that have retail, they do better. Because when, you know, Fortune 100s and Fortune 500s and the CEOs and CFOs and CEOs come out here and and the operations folks, they say, where do my people eat? Where do they get gas? Where do they pick up the dry cleaning? Where do they get their phone repair? Where do they get their computer repaired, right? Where do they eat breakfast? Where they, obviously, hotels you have, right? And so that helps us. But I think a plan on a piece of paper is one thing. I think putting up a cash, make me, you know, trust but verify, I think that's a much different position than anybody's ever been on this piece of property.
Yeah, I think the provision there was the city wants to support the commercial development. That's what
Right.
we want to see. But we didn't want to have a situation where they say, well, we tried, it wouldn't happen. So that's why the penalties agreed to make it pretty substantial so that they're really
So they're gonna have an
incentivized to get
escrow
the
account to
commercial.
hold the money.
Yeah,
Somebody is.
make me accountable and make it painful.
You're kind.
If I can also comment too, another incentive in this program is we, through this agreement, we tied in their application period for building permits. So before they can get permits to go to the next phase, they have to accomplish the retail commercial portion on Wick Road as well. So there's two incentives for them before they can move on and get additional permits.
Okay, the other question is, the Royal Farms, is it going to be handled by Royal Farms, or is it going to be a franchisee?
So this was a great question. That's a really good question that your staff asked. They do not franchisee. They do not franchise.
They handle their own.
They own and operate their own.
That's good.
Nothing against the franchise system. Their mindset is, we want to control it soup to nuts, as I would say. And that's their model.
Okay. Well, I'm somehow impressed with your traffic. I think that you're doing well. That's my biggest concern, is trucks stopping in the Royal, blocking traffic, or just piling them up in there.
Yep.
And
And
is
again,
there
I
truck
think we
parking
will-
at the Royal? Will it be truck parking at the Royal?
There will not be, so this was a big thing again. It's like
Okay.
it's scripted. It's like your staff listened to you. They said absolutely no overnight truck parking. So I don't know, we've tried to zoom in as best possible. We're happy to give you a more zoomed in plan if you need it. But this is not a Love's, this is not a Flying J, right? There are
Right.
diesel pumps, so a truck can get gas here, but obviously other contractors and landscapers and things need diesel as well. But there's no overnight parking at all.
Okay.
They don't allow it, they don't want it, and we don't want it. So that's
Okay.
why I think our marriage there fits really well.
Okay, I think all in all, you've come a long ways.
We've come a long way.
You have come a long ways, which
was
is
a little
not all
painful there
bad
for
for
a bit.
you or the city. Okay, that's all I have, Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask anybody else, this is just so impressive. I mean, we have spent so much time trying to develop this piece of property
Yeah.
and, you know, come across so many roadblocks. And then when you came on board, we won't even talk about before. When the new and improved came on board,
Before Brent. You are former.
the former, right, the former. Anyhow, I've just been very impressed with your approach. I'm very impressed with the way our administration handled it, our planning department, our planners, your attorney, our attorney, your representatives. I would just like to see them all handled this way.
Big kudos to your staff. They could have easily never
Yeah,
accepted an apology, and we would have never seen each other again.
right,
And that's a really, that takes a big person
yeah.
and big people, right? So that's kudos to them.
I can say this is the first time, I think, in a long time that I've been excited about a project.
Good. That makes me happy.
So anyhow, I give credit where credit's due, and a lot of people were involved, and a lot of people worked hard
Yeah.
and saw it through.
Yeah, we did.
Any other questions or comments from
So the
anybody?
traffic report is coming forthwith, am I correct?
We just submitted it
Oh, okay.
today, but so we've been having lots of conversations up to that, and now that will be obviously will be a contingency as before it moves, further.
Sure, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Robade?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had to go first, then I can go next.
Yes. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, I think Grover was first.
Oh,
Through the chair, I do have a question about the truck traffic.
Sure.
You mentioned in your presentation where there's going to be, in your lease, where they're not allowed to turn right.
That's right.
That's nice, that's unique.
It's, I think, we talked a lot about it. I think there was we didn't listen, but we learned a lot over the last 2 years from Pennsylvania to California in other projects. And so the things that I was hearing out of you, we had a solution. What do our residents get? How do you handle truck traffic? How do you handle the Smith and the interior? So I think that actually, this is something we've implemented in other places that's worked well.
Now, if they continue to turn right, you bring in a tenant that has business north of the city of some sort, and they continue to turn right, would there be monetary penalties for them?
So this is something that we would work with, and I actually talked with our team about it today, and I think this would take further by your staff. If we police it, how do we work with the city? Is it us enforcing it only, or do we have a partnership with the city? I think that's something that probably needs more exploration. If we're saying it's illegal, does that mean it is illegal? And then you start getting into the city code and ordinances and how the police, are they private? How does that work? So I think that one probably needs some more exploring. We still have the hammer of the lease of default and penalty through the lease, but I will tell you that CDL, my dad was a trucker. If you're a CDL and you get a ticket, you're paying that, you're not gonna like that. And so how do we work together to best enforce that? And I think that's probably some involvement, I'll call it with your police department. I think you have your own police department, and I don't know if that's I think that's city or county, I don't know. So sometimes we're working with police departments or county sheriffs or something. So I think that takes further refinement.
I do have a comment about the conditional rezoning. I do like how the road frontage that's facing the freeway in Wick Road, that's not changing. And then also the part that is changing does not back up to any type of residential property, and it's probably a mile from any type of residential properties.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I didn't want to be a smart aleck, but it's very, very, very rare that I have a hearing like this tonight that you don't have someone from the public. That's a unique situation, and I think that's somewhat because of the design, but you are a fair distance. Obviously, traffic affects where residents are getting home and things like that. But you are a pretty good distance from any pure residential.
Yep, and then also with your truck routing that you're talking about, it should keep them away from those residential areas.
And that's
Like
what
you
we've heard
said.
the most, right?
Yep.
Is that basically north and west, right? Primarily, I think is what we've heard. And so that's why I would say our number one problem to solve was how do you get the trucks out one way and get going left and south, right, instead of north? And again, eliminating that connection to Smith was a major factor of that. I think what you have honestly going on, and others can comment on this better than me, but I've driven this 100 times, is that because of Amazon so far north, then after they leave Amazon, where do they go? I think they are taking E-Force. Like, I know this happens, and you'll say, well, you can't say that this truck isn't going to go north or whatever, but being this far south in the connection to 94 and the infrastructure that we have in the signal and all that, I don't understand why anyone would go from our park. Right, it's not intuitive, it doesn't make sense to me. I could see if we were further north or something, that I could see that being a disruption. But where we're at and the infrastructure and how we're designing it, that intuitively just doesn't make sense to me. And you would say, well, you can't control a truck, or the GPS sends them this way. We've tried 5 different apps from that intersection on how to get out. We've never been sent right. That's as scientific as I
There'll
can
be
get.
some of those businesses dealing with locals too. They'll be delivering to locals.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that doesn't, and when we talk about trucks, there's different definitions of truck, right? Let's say, for example, Lowe's and their appliance delivery, or Home Depot, or somebody like that. You're probably gonna get a van or a box truck if they have a delivery in your neighborhood, That's not atypical, right? So that's probably one that's, I would say that we're really trying to prevent the large semis. That's what we're really trying to prevent.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep.
Thank you. Through the chair, to follow up with his comment, you have the ability to make it almost impossible for them to turn right? Because if you got a sign that says left turn lane,
Right.
left turn only, that doesn't guarantee it. But if you do something with the curb cut or something like that, to make it almost impossible where they would run over the curb in order to turn right, because they're going to if there's an ability.
Right, so signage and the hammer release can do so much, but just physically make it a channel, right? And that's really it's gonna be that raised curb idea. It's gonna be virtually impossible for a truck to get through that. So I think that's something we're gonna work in hand in hand with your city engineer and staff. I know the first thing they're gonna flip to probably in this plan and study is how are you preventing that? And I think it's really what I would call a channelization of the separation of car and truck, right? Car's good, truck's not.
The other issue is when they do make that left turn around there, to prevent them from going down Wick Road, headed towards Wayne, because if 94 is backed up, you could see it from a distance. And then them wanting to take an alternate route, that would be their next alternate route. If they're forced to turn left, they're going to go up Wick. Wick becomes residential.
Come out of the park and then make a left on Wick, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, they can make a left, and then they'll actually make a right onto Wick
on
to
the
head
right.
towards
Okay.
Wayne Road, and that becomes residential.
I'm sorry, you drive it, I've driven it 100 times. Is there, at Wick, there's not a signal that you can't make a right taking Vining south, you can't make a right on Wick today, right? And do trucks do that today? I don't know if I've noticed that.
Well, right now, Wick has got construction, so
Oh, that's
no
right.
one can go down there.
That's why you can't.
That's why, yeah. I was like, I don't think I've noticed that. So, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if Mark or somebody else, we can take a look at that, but we've not been asked that question before.
Yeah, that would be my concern, because I do take these roads back here from time to time, because part of my job is on the road, and I do try to avoid traffic at 94 because it gets backed up.
Okay.
And those are some of my routes, and I do see the trucks back there. Also, that Vining Road, because it is heavily driven already, it's already in need of repair. So there's any kind of plans to do any improvements to that Vining Road?
To Vining?
Mm-hmm.
I had not, I don't think we had seen that in any of our traffic report, but we can take a look at that.
Yeah, because Vining and Smith, because I do take that road from time to time again to avoid traffic. And
What
it's,
is it, potholes, or what's going on?
so it's deteriorating at the seams.
I think then it is, Jessica and I were that'll be one of the things we'll look at in the traffic study and all the geometrics, because you're right, somebody southbound, if 94 is backed up or the signal's backed up, they could potentially go to the west, and so we'll look at the geometrics there and signs and other things and make sure we're paying attention to that as part of this traffic review.
Yeah.
And just a comment in regards to the conditions of Vining and Smith. Last year, the TIF board did approve and undergo construction to do patchwork on all of the Vining and Smith that was seen at distress. So if you drive out there today, it's much improved. There should not be any pops or holes or potholes. In 2019, it certainly was a very rough ride.
And the other question is that I heard the comment regarding to the new light that's going to go in there, and it wasn't clear if we're paying for that or if you're paying for that, because it said possibly you, but then I heard TIFA funds,
Yeah, so that is, we're still working on that in the total infrastructure that's going to be paid with the TIFA or not, so that's still in, I would say, in negotiation. That's the best answer. We wanted to give you the assurance that it is going in, whether that's us by us or by via TIFA.
all right. And I did have another question, that the station, that gas station that's going in, will there be any charging stations since we're trying to make a move from
Yeah.
fossil fuels?
So that's a really interesting, you're actually the first person that's asked that. So we will, I think they have a commitment to do at least 2 charging stations. All our buildings will have charging stations, if you don't know. Every single building that we have has charging stations. So we currently do these certified as green globe, we call green globes. We are considering, right now, we were working with LEED on a mass nationwide LEED programmatic plan for all our buildings. So I don't want to say that they're going to be LEED, they'll at least be green globes, which means solar, charging stations, and we're actually working on a solution to go directly from solar to the charging station, so we can DC to DC, not DC to AC. So we have literally a whole team working on that, just because we're seeing the rise. Tesla was one thing, but now with Ford and GM and others, and electric Jeep and all the things that are coming, we're seeing a tenant demand saying, 5 or 10% of my employees are using charging stations. This is a requirement. So we've just set that as a standard going forward to put charging stations in all our buildings, and I'm sure Royal Farms will have at least 2.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that I usually do ask new developers if they're planning to be LEED certified, because I think that unfortunately not enough people are considering that, and we need to move towards that.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that consideration, at least a move towards those things.
Yeah,
It's important.
The green globes, what we've found is works really well. It's nothing against LEED in particular. We've just found that it's $200,000 for a plaque versus putting that money into something that is actually useful to the tenant, and whether that's solar or LED lighting, irrigation, the landscaping piece. So we don't get asked that question a lot. We just do it because we have a ton of corporate clients that say, is this building LEED or green globes? Granger, Adidas, Patagonia. Patagonia will not lease a building unless it's LEED certified. They just have an environmental sustainability policy. So it's coming.
I think it might be helpful to end in some of the planning commission, since Julie Kroll is here and you haven't seen the full traffic study, maybe just a quick overview about the traffic signals and the timing of how they would fit in, because I know you've brought that up before, so that might be, if that's the commission is interested in like a 2-minute overview of the main impact of the traffic study, or at least where the signals are going.
Yeah, like a 2-minute overview? Sure.
What would be helpful, just from a high level?
I have one more question before you step away.
Probably that one.
So you mentioned that the trees, the shrubs going in are 4 feet instead of 3. Do you have any kind of rendering so we could see what that looks like on those berms? Is there's enough
Excuse me, Edna?
screening?
We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You hear me? Okay. I asked him about the 4-foot bushes that are going in,
At the very end?
if they had a rendering, to see what that looks like on the berms, if it's enough screening.
So we just went ahead and modeled this in a 3D so you can see that. Probably that bottom left. That's on vinyl as a perspective.
What's the maximum growth of those?
Maximum
Growth, as far as height?
30, at least 30 feet,
Okay.
closer to 40. I mean, it takes time, of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bowade, did you have some questions now?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. On page 4, it's 4 here on my. Yes, that one. Could you walk me through if a truck is coming into building 6 or 7, what will be the path?
Yeah, do you mind if I walk over there?
Yes,
and do
yes,
it?
yes.
It might be just a little bit easier.
Do we have a handheld microphone?
So truck,
We probably need that microphone. And isn't the pointer, Mary, is the,
can everybody hear me okay?
You gotta do something like this.
Do we have a pointer in the back? So truck would come in here. This is the main, this covers it up, but that road is underneath it. And see, this is the truck court. These are the docks. So cars come here and park here. Trucks and docks are on this side of the building.
So you said the truck route is under,
It's kind of under that blue box. Do you see it right here?
okay.
Mhm. And then
So
there's
you
the
go
side.
and then you make a turn around at that circle, kind of like a cul-de-sac?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're a truck and you're coming up here to building 6,
Mhm.
you would come in, can you see the pointer okay?
Yep,
You come in, you follow this,
yep.
This way.
and then you come up through here.
So you go right in the middle, at the
go right-
median? Okay.
Yeah, this is a road, this is a road. You lose scale, this is a road.
Okay, how wide is that?
Generally 30 feet, yeah, I was gonna say 30, 40 feet.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's definitely a 2-lane,
Okay.
right, with room to maneuver.
okay.
And then depending on which part of the building, obviously, you could come in here, back in. Typically, you know, a truck wants to back in this method. That's why we think through this, right, so they can look over their shoulder, there isn't a blind spot.
Okay, so talking about that, you just led to my next question. So a trucker comes into building 6, he or she wants to back into the docks.
Yes?
Where would that happen?
Yeah, so they would come in here, and they would come in here. This is 190 feet.
Okay,
So again, you lose scale. My dad would kill me as a trucker if I didn't give him 190 feet. So with these 53 footers, you really need that 190 feet to maneuver. I think, again, a lot of developers will do 175, 180. We always add that extra 10, just because no one likes getting all their stuff smashed out here by the truck. So giving them that extra 10, and then obviously you've got this nice driveway in between. That's also for your fire protection. That's obviously wide enough for fire trucks and things like that as well. This is heavy, this will be heavy duty, this will be, most likely this will be concrete. Truck roads are typically almost all concrete.
Okay. And then how wide is the road, the one right before the quote-unquote cul-de-sac at the edge?
Right here,
Yes,
30 feet.
okay. Okay, so based on your analysis, projections, I'm sure you would have done some of those. How many trucks do you think would come into building 6, 4, 7 per day?
So the peak.
Here you go.
I'm James Kratz with North Point Development. The traffic numbers indicate the peak AM is 26 trucks inbound and 20 trucks outbound, so there's 46 trucks in the peak time in the morning. In the evening is less than that, it's 33 trucks total in and out during the peak hours.
Is there overnight truck parking? Or that will be baked into the lease to make sure they don't pack trucks, or do they just dump trailers?
Yeah, typically what you'd see here is that you'd see a trailer. These, again, you lose scale. That's your trailer spots, right? That's for overnight. So dump a trailer, have to come get it in the morning, back it into the dock, load it, take off.
Okay, so the 175 feet, is it from the building to the edge? So let's assume there is a trailer packed. Will the truck still be able to back up?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's wide enough to hold the trailer, have the path, this.
It might help if you go to slide like 14 or 16, shows
Might
up
be
a little
zoomed
bit
in a
better.
little bit. Yeah, 14 is probably a really good one. You can see a little bit of scale there.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Madam Chairman, real quick, well, all this will be covered as far as parking radiuses and all that when we do a site plan review, because we're not doing a site
You're
plan
going to
review.
see
Yeah.
a site plan,
Right.
just like you normally do.
All we're doing is
Full site plan.
letting city council know if we feel that it's appropriate for him to have a special land use and rezoning.
Okay.
But everything, all the details
Picked up.
will be picked up in the site plan review.
Okay.
We'll
So
see
now-
all the buildings in the site plan.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I had was on page 11. So so let's take, for example, this unit 12 retail. Are you saying there are 12 units there, or that's number 12?
We just labeled them.
Okay,
Yeah, there's not 12 units, so like Royal Farm is 12, 13, 14, 15.
because when I looked at unit 24, I tried to count and couldn't get 24.
Yeah, 24, we simply put, that's probably a coffee or retail. Are you saying, how did we get to 24?
Yeah,
Roads are numbered.
So the units are essentially lots or tracts, so it
Okay.
includes the detention
The
areas
access.
and the access parcels in there also.
I see.
So they're not 24 buildings on the site, but there are 24 different parcels.
gotcha.
There'll be a condominium plan that comes in with this. I think you saw that for Ecorse Commons.
Right.
So as part of the site plan, the other thing that you'll be seeing is the condominium, preliminary condominium plan.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then, just also want to echo my other commissioners in terms of the landscaping, the thought that went into including the retail, commercial piece. I think, you've said over and over again, you listened, and, we would like more of that, But, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Roscoe?
Yes, I'm very impressed with your whole booklet.
Thank you.
Very well done, real easy to read. and go through it just quickly because we just got this part of it. But also, I'm impressed with the fact that how you're incorporating the retail. I think it's going to make it a whole lot easier, especially when I go back to council and everybody else here does, to make the logic work. And hopefully they'll see the logic of how you're spacing the buildings and how you're bringing in the retail in the phases. But I think it's very impressive with the thought you put into the traffic flow, because that's a biggie.
It is.
When you come to council with that, that's one of their biggest concerns is the truck traffic. And so hopefully we can make this all flow real well, because this is very well done.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Appreciate your apologies and all those good words you brought along with all this.
Well, if it goes well, I take
all
credit. If it
this.
doesn't go well, I blame them.
Should be the other way around.
I like that.
We
I'm a real
appreciate it.
team, I'm a real team player and inspirational
Well, we
leader.
appreciate that. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you, in all sincerity, thank you.
Mr. Gladfeldy?
Yes, through the chair, what is the piece of land below unit number 7, building 7, what is proposed to go in there?
I think
That's electrical.
That's the GLWA.
I don't see,
that's the sewer, is that the sewer? Is that the water and sewer facility?
It's a pump station.
is it okay? I missed that somewhere.
It's a parcel we don't own.
Oh, that's, okay, that's Detroit Water and Sewer then.
Yeah.
Great Lake Water.
I already know what that is. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Carol, what else do we need to cover here?
Just quickly, the traffic.
Do you know?
Oh, I'm sorry,
The
Julie?
traffic.
Do you want to do the
Oh,
traffic?
that's right.
Yes, Julie, we want to give, yeah. She came all the way here. We should
Julie, just 2 minutes.
Make it worthwhile for Julie driving back up from
That's all right.
Kalamazoo or Columbus.
Julie Kroll, Felice and Vandenbrink. And so we did the traffic study. We were engaged recently to update the traffic study. We included the Vistar that we had done across the street. Amazon was already in place, and we added in also the rest of the Kajalian site across the street as a future development as part of the traffic study, in addition to the full build-out scenario, which you've seen here. So what we came up with is a summary of recommendations for the entire site for each phase. So when each of the timing for each of the mitigations, honestly, the majority of them are needed for phase 1 because that gas station is such a big generator of traffic for this site. So most of the mitigations that we recommended were in phase 1, but we did identify that the existing westbound off-ramp interchange does meet signal warrants right now. So that's something that they'd want to consider on day 1. For that signal. We also identified that that meets warrants for a signal at the build-out of phase 1 for the eastbound ramp. So there was, in totality, 4 traffic signals that we're recommending. 2 were at the ramps to 94, and then the 1 signal that will be for their truck access, the new signalized full access off of Vining, and then the other signalized intersection they already have in place. It's just not operational because it's for future site access, so we recommended that that signal remain there to provide access, and that will just be for cars. All of the truck trips were generated only at that centralized driveway that they're providing on site. There was no other truck trips associated with this development, and all the truck trips will be headed to the south, to 94. So we'll be working on geometrics and recommendations so that we make sure that that actually happens. 2 minutes?
I think you did great. That was good.
Thank you.
I just have a question about the traffic study through the chair, if that's
Sure,
okay.
for the traffic study?
Yes. A question for you. Would there be detectors with these traffic signals?
Yes, I would. These will all be fully modernized traffic signals per city standards, yes. Yep.
Okay. Would there be a 4th level left?
I'm sorry?
A 4th level left?
4th level left.
So you have like the yellow, red, yellow, green, and then you have the other
Protected
signal.
phasing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so specifically at that one that you guys already have at Wick Road, it's kind of, to make that work with that driveway, we're gonna have to have protected left turn. So with a protected left turn arrow there to actually make that work because of the geometry. So at the other intersections, yes, it's the same because you have this big wide boulevard to actually make it work. We're gonna have to put in left turn arrows, yes.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Carol, is there anything else, or Bob, that we need to address? Or Brad?
We do, OHM has a review letter, and MKSK, we've kind of covered it lightly, but I don't know if Jessica or Anne Marie want to go through in more detail, or if you have questions of
Right.
the review letters in detail.
Jessica?
Sure. Just going to get to that part in my packet. In regards to the conditional rezoning and the special land use applications that were presented to the city, we took a look at the architectural and engineering aspects of the site. And in regards to the existing infrastructure and how that could support this proposed development and what additional improvements the applicant is offering in order to increase the capacity of the infrastructure that's there. So in regards to the water and the sanitary sewer, there is adequate facilities on 3 sides of the proposed development. They are proposing to loop the water main within the development, so that'll provide redundancy and reliability to the water system. And we will look at each user as the occupant becomes known to determine what the capacity and what impact that user will have on those infrastructures. We also took a look at the stormwater management system that they're proposing. Wayne County did just pass their new standards for stormwater management. We've been in discussion with the developer and their proposed engineer to make sure that they'll be able to accommodate the new Wayne County standards as well. Nothing has been reviewed in detail. Everything's been very high level. Paving, they have adequate proposed paving cross-sections. And as Brent has stated, is they have not identified where those cross-sections will be utilized, but that's something that we'll work through on each one of the site plan processes. The grading in general, none of the drainage pattern is going to change. You're basically flowing from the northwest down to the north or to the southeast. There'll be a requirement for a drain relocation permit from Wayne County for the Rosenworth drain. And the impact on the drain, the impact of the drain relocation to the site has been taken into account on the site layout. Traffic, we've talked about quite a bit. We've met with Fleece and Vanderbrink, Julie and her team. We agreed with her scope. I've had a chance to just thumb through some of the 300 pages of the traffic impact study that was submitted today, and do agree with the recommendations that are coming out of it. We'll take a look at some of the numbers and make sure that all of the inputs were correct, and that's how we get to the recommendations. And then the architectural, we did take a look at it. These buildings that are being proposed today are much, much different than what was looked at in 2019. And they are meeting the intent of the Vining Road Overlay District. There's a lot of articulation horizontally, vertically. There's texture changes, color changes, material changes that are just bringing an aesthetic to the park that is meeting the intent of the Vining Road Overlay that this Planning Commission had enacted in that area. The conditional rezoning agreement, there are quite a few comments that are listed. As the applicant had stated, they are working through those with the city staff, us, and legal counsel. So those are all pending, but nothing has been a deal breaker at this moment.
If I could add and supplement that, and actually to thank Jessica for handling the agreement in the format that you saw it and the exhibits with all the bubbles. As you know, we've got great consultants here, and Jim Tam, who's not here tonight, but worked very, very hard on this agreement as well. And instead of having them write review letters and write up each one of these comments, we would meet with the applicant, and Jessica just did a phenomenal job at putting these comments actually into the document and presenting them in the format that we hope that you guys could understand. And again, we worked through a lot of them. There's a few things left. It's just a lot of housekeeping stuff. But the process works so well, you know, both with our team and these guys as well. But the special thanks to Jessica for doing all that.
Yes.
We all sat there and went, who's going to do it? She volunteered, so.
Zoom has been very helpful with this whole process.
Madam Chairman, one question, I assume I've read through the agreement, I did not have word per word. I assume that if they can't be leaving trucks there that don't run, containers, the 18-wheeler trailers, that sit there for 2 or 3 weeks.
There's actually a provision in the special land use. There's one of your specific requirements does deal with that.
Yeah, okay.
And on that specific site plan, they'll put a note on the plan
You'll put a
that
note.
says everything's got to be operational, everything's got to be associated with the business. You can't
Okay.
just start
Thank you.
putting stuff out there. Yep, that's a good catch, Dave. It's a
I thought
standard
it was in-
note that we
okay. I
have.
didn't notice anything in the
Yeah, you'll see it on the
agreement.
site plan.
Pardon?
You'll see it on the site plan.
Yeah. The bubbles on the agreement were very helpful, because usually we have to look this and we have to go back
Right,
over
you have to
here.
match it to the letter. And
Look and
yep,
see
yep,
what
that's
it
why-
says,
That's why
and then-
this was a great way to solve that.
Yeah, so, I mean, this was great. This was great. It was great all around. Do I have any other questions or comments from anybody? I will now, yes, Mr.
If I can, through the chair, just a quick comment. I just want to applaud a lot of people who had a lot of effort here. First, Brett's team and the North Point team, they heard what we were saying. They wanted to know why, in a frank conversation, why the city wasn't excited about the project that we saw 2 years ago. We just conveyed the message you gave to us, and the elected officials told us, and they went to work. You know, they wanted to address the trucks, and they wanted to see something in it for the residents, and I brought in the retail component of it. And Jessica, Brad, Carol, even Mary, everybody's jumped in and done a ton of work on this job to get to this point. And we're focusing right now on the Wick Road retail, which we think this is going to be a great catalyst once you bring this amount of dollars in jobs into that area. But also look at Merriman Road. That's really going to help that hotel district out for a long time to come. So very excited about this, very excited about moving it forward, and just hats off to everybody from the Romulus team and also to the North Point team for trying to find creative ways to get this done, because it was stalled out. 2 years ago, we had no interest in it, and they weren't listening to the process, and they switched some key players over there on that side, and here we are now, 2 years later, with the product that we're all, you know, fairly excited about. So, well, not fairly, but really excited about, so.
Yes. And we have to, kudos to you, Bob, also. You were a big part of this whole process.
I was just a messenger. I told them what you wanted to see, so. If you want
No,
to
I
get
think
past
you did a
planning,
little more
commission,
than
and
that.
council, you need to add these things in here, so.
Yeah, no, I
Bob
think
did
you,
this great job, though, that we would all talk about our own certain areas and how he could remember it and then pass it on and be the spokesperson was great. He did do a phenomenal job of that.
yeah.
A lot of sticky notes.
Yeah, lots of stuff.
So at this point, are we ready to propose a motion?
Did you want anything in
Anything you want-
gas
any other-
calendar?
any
The
comments?
yellow is the supplement. Anne
Oh, yeah.
Marie did a
I
great
read
job
that.
of summarizing things from the letter, which just are the, you know, sort of the findings of fact, and particularly, you know, at the bottom, a couple of things. That you did have the public hearing open. You can probably close it, obviously, before you vote.
Right.
But they do need to be two separate motions, because you do
Right.
have two things in front of you tonight. But did you guys want to talk about, you guys had a couple of questions in here that you need a little bit more information on?
Yeah, we talked about the sidewalk plan already. I think it was described now in this booklet a little bit more, but as Anne Marie noted, the amenities in the open space
Right.
weren't that well described, but they are in the booklet now, so I think that condition or comment that we noted has been satisfied now. And then the other item is the parking, and they are requesting as part of this the allowance to go to additional 10% of parking. They've kind of gone through information from us with their other North Point sites of why they need additional parking because of types of employment and so forth, and they're not always sure of who the tenants are going to be, and so they want the site at least designed. They don't have to come back and get approval for additional parking, but they won't build more parking than what they need. So as the site plans come in, they may bank it and not provide it, but on the overall plan, the development plan, they wanted that authority to be able to go to provide some additional parking based on their typical tenant mix and
So-
their parking needs.
Are we talking 10% per building or 10% total
10% overall.
overall?
Madam Chairman. Through the Chair. Just a question on motions. These are two separate motions, I understand that, but then we have, which one of them is going to include all the consultant notes and requirements,
That would be the special land use, wouldn't it?
right?
Yeah, that's, yes.
That'd be a special land use,
Special
right?
land use.
Okay.
Because the other one is just, we're just asking for a rezoning.
Can't tell what's tied to what. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Good question.
Well, I guess I better close the public hearing portion of the meeting. So I will do that now. And then, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? And if not, motions are in order.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. McAnally.
I'll make a motion to recommend to City Council to approve the conditional rezoning application for the Romulus Trade Center to conditionally rezone 171.6 acres from RC Regional Center District to M1 Light Industrial District along the south side of Smith Road, east of Vining Road, north of Wick Road for the construction of a warehouse and industrial buildings totaling up to 2,161,968 square feet.
Support. I have a motion from Mr. McAnally, supported by Mr. Krova, to recommend to City Council approval of the conditional rezoning application for the Brahmos Trade Center. Conditionally rezone 171.6 acres from RC Regional Center District to M1 Light Industrial District along the south side. Yada, yada, yada. It's on, let's see, it's on the paper from MKSK dated August 31st, 2021. Any discussion? Mr. McAnally?
Yes.
Mr. Krova?
Yes.
Mr. Wawade?
Yes.
Ms. Roscoe?
Yes.
Ms. Jemison?
Yes.
Mr. Gladfelty?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, we recommend to City Council. Now, for the second part, we need a motion to recommend to City Council approval of special land use.
And this is the one that you probably want to condition it upon, basically the information in your packet this evening. You'll contain in the consultant review letters and also on the draft conditional rezoning agreement.
And the findings of fact.
And the findings of fact.
Madam Chairman.
You got it?
I'll make a motion to recommend to City Council approval of the special land use application for Romulus Trade Center along south side of Smith Road, east of Vining, north of Wick Road, to allow for 7 to 9 warehouse and light industrial buildings over 80,000 square feet, including all the consultant notes and fact findings that are given to us in our report.
You could say based on the findings contained
Based on the
in the
findings.
MKSK report and all associated reports and
Yes.
that document that I want to, basically.
It's all the reports and fact findings that we
reports
have
and-
read through
And the
tonight.
draft conditional rezoning agreement.
I would also suggest you use this booklet as also a part of the application and make reference to that, so it's also.
And also including
Yeah.
the submitted publication
Submitted publication and the agreement also, you said, right?
and the
The
agreement.
agreement, right, the reports and the draft agreement.
Pretty much everything we have.
Agreement and the
Publication.
publication. Okay, let's see if we can get this. Okay, I have a motion.
Yes, you do.
I need somebody to approve, second it.
Support.
Gladfelty? Okay. There we go. I have a motion from Mr. McAnally, couldn't find you, supported by Mr. Gladfelty, to recommend to City Council approval of the special land use SLU, we got the number right, 2020003, for the Romulus Trade Center along the south side of Smith Road, east of Vining Road, north of Wick, and to allow for 79 warehouse and light industrial buildings over 80,000 square feet, including the, can't read my writing, the findings.
Consult reports.
Based on
Based on, sorry.
the findings of fact.
I got that,
The
based on-
MKSK report, the package submitted by North Point.
Right, the package.
All associated reports, and the draft conditional rezoning agreement. How does that
And the
sound?
conditional rezoning agreement, yeah, what she
Does that
said.
catch everything?
Yeah, I think that's everything.
I think that covers it all.
That's a safe one.
Does anybody want me to repeat that?
Do it again.
No? Okay. Any discussion? Mr. McAnally,
Yes.
Mr. Gladfelty,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Ms. Jemison,
Yes.
Ms. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Boboade,
Yes.
Mr. Crova.
Yes.
The chair votes yes, and we will pass this one on to City Council also.
Good luck.
Good luck, gentlemen and ladies.
Good luck.
Nice job.
This is exciting. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Nice job.
Yes, I mean, this was excellent, excellent.
Thanks for listening to your dad, too, about the trucks.
No, you just gotta remember, go blue. Okay, where are we at now? Oh! Item 5 is adjournment.
So moved.
Mr. McAnally made the motion and supported by Mr. Paul to adjourn. Mr. McAnally?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Gladfelty?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Ms. Jemison?
Yes.
Ms. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Crova?
Yes.
Mr. Boboade?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. This meeting stands adjourned.